Hey, super awesome listeners, back this week with another one of Jenn's summer picks. This will be the last one of the summer. Jenn is back next week. But this week, you get her interview with Famous and Gravy's Michael Osborne. Really interesting episode here from earlier this year. So enjoy it and get ready because Jenn's back with new content next week.
Hey, Michael.
Hey, Jenn.
What are you listening to this week? Welcome to What Are You Listening To? The weekly podcast created to foster community through music by sharing the stories and memories that soundtrack our lives. Some of the songs are old, some new, all good. I'm Jenn Tully, and this week I'm joined by Dr. Michael Osborne. Michael is a podcast producer, creative consultant, and host of the Famous and Gravy podcast, a conversation about what really matters in life, one dead celebrity at a time. We'll learn more about Michael and Famous and Gravy in between the music. Also, did you know that now on Spotify, you can listen to the show with the songs we discuss incorporated? Just search for What Are You Listening To with music. If you're not listening on Spotify, be sure to give the playlist a listen and then tune into our conversation. With that, let's get started. Michael, what are you listening to this week?
I am listening to Little Wing by Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Oh, this is such a good song, and I'm so happy about this playlist for so many reasons because we get to talk about some of my favorite classic rock and some new, a little bit of new in there too, new for me at least. And so tell me about Little Wing and why you chose this song, especially the Stevie Ray Vaughan version. I'm really interested to know.
Yeah, it's, I think it's like the earliest, best song I ever fell in love with. So, I was pretty young when Stevie Ray Vaughan died, and, I'm born and raised in Austin, and he's, sort of an Austin figure in so many ways.
Yeah.
We have a statue to him. And I didn't know his music when he died. And there was an album floating around, Life by the Drop, that was not exactly a greatest hits album, but had a lot of music from across his catalog. And Little Wing was in so many ways like the most, I don't even know what it means to say this exactly, but the most Austin song. There's something about it that totally captured the music scene in the early 80s. There's something about, Texas blues in there. I didn't even know it was originally a Jimi Hendrix song. And, we're saying song, there's no lyrics in the Stevie Ray version. But it's just like, Stevie Ray's guitar in all its glory. It just all comes together in his version of Little Wing. I hadn't heard it in many years. And the other day I was out for a bike ride and I was listening to music and it came on in a playlist and it just hit me in the gut. I mean, it just totally took me back to, I don't know, the Austin of my youth. So that's why I selected it. Yeah.
It's so funny that that it conjured so much Austin for you, because one of the first notes I wrote was that this song is like the national anthem of Austin.
Oh, really? Yeah. I've always wondered, is it interpreted that way outside of Austin? And I assume it is.
I think so. I mean, I grew up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and moved to Austin in 2010, and I think all of Texas kind of claims Stevie Ray Vaughan, but
Sure.
Definitely Austin has a special place for him. And so that was something that really resonated with me too about this song, is just sort of that shared Austin love that comes through in Stevie Ray Vaughan's music, and Austinites give it back to Stevie Ray. Like you said, we have a big statue of him down near Auditorium Shore. He and Willie Nelson are sort of the two unofficial ambassadors of Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
But yeah, I discovered this song from the Couldn't Stand the Weather album that came out in 1984. And the song that was a standout for me when I originally heard the album as a young kid, was Cold Shot. I always loved the song Cold Shot.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until I really started getting into Jimi Hendrix that I started to really appreciate Stevie Ray Vaughan version of this song, which, like you said, is different. Jimmy's version is, starts with like, you can hear the little bells, and it's definitely like psychedelic. It has lyrics, whereas the Stevie Ray Vaughan version is just oozes to me, right? It's like molasses. It just keeps building and ebbing and flowing. And I just think that like you cannot not feel something when you're hearing this song, right? It's so moving for being almost, I think it's a 6.5 minute song. I'm almost 7 minutes. It's a long song. And the Stevie Ray or the Jimi Hendrix version, I think is only like 2.5 minutes.
It's super short. Yeah.
Yeah. So that gives you an idea of like Stevie just takes it and makes it his own. And I feel like it's just seeped in Texas. And I don't know if that's why I love it so much. But also too, like I didn't know one guy in high school or college who didn't have, the Stevie Ray Vaughan CD and love it, as much as everybody did. But it seemed like, especially in Texas and in Austin, this song and Stevie Ray Vaughan in particular really, really resonated. And I will plug too, if you've not listened to the Legacy edition of the Can't Stand the Weather album, it is worth a listen. It is like 2.5 hours of Stevie Ray Vaughan magic. So a little plug for the Legacy edition of Couldn't Stand the Weather. If you are new to Stevie Ray Vaughan or want to get a little bit deeper, I feel like that's a great way to experience him in all of his glory.
I just wanted to hop in and say one other thing. You use the term ebb and flow. I do think that there is something very much kind of like a river about this song in a real literal sense. So I really love whitewater paddling, and most rivers will sort of have like a series of rapids, and then it like cools off and it's serene and flat water for a little while, and then more rapids and then more flat water. And that is very much like the experience of that song. It picks up and it's down. It picks up and like, I don't know, the activity, like when it's really rolling, like, oh my God, are his skills on display?
Oh yeah.
So yeah, anyway, I liked what you had to say about ebb and flow.
Definitely. And I know that, you mentioned that we lost Stevie Ray Vaughan several years ago. And in the Famous and Gravy podcast, you guys often cover dead celebrities. I think you keep it focused, though, on folks that have passed in the last 10 years. Is that right? So we won't be experiencing a Stevie Ray Vaughan episode anytime soon.
Too dead, I'm afraid. Too dead. Yeah.
Too dead. He's too dead.
That's what we use for anybody who's lost the 10-year time horizon. But then we did do an episode on Jerry Jeff Walker, who's also very much a sort of part of the Texas scene, and has a real legacy with outlaw country. Did an episode on John Prine, and then there's some other folks on the horizon. I'll save them. I don't want to spoil it necessarily.
All right. Well, Stevie would be a good one to celebrate your Austin heritage if ever that one comes up.
It's totally true. I'm afraid he's too dead, but yeah.
Too dead. Well, and I don't know too, like you can talk a little bit, please, to the listeners in case they're not familiar with the podcast about Famous and Gravy. It really is where you're talking about the celebrity, kind of analyzing their life, and then deciding if was it worth having their existence, kind of, right?
Yeah. Would you want their life? That's the central question of every episode is, would you want that life? And one of the ways I like to describe it is to say, a lot of celebrity shows and a lot of biography shows are really mostly focused on impact and legacy. What was somebody's contribution to society or to culture, to art, what have you? We're interested in legacy, but we're more interested in desirability. Would you have wanted that life is a different question than why was this person important? So it is a kind of exercise in empathetic imagining. And the categories on the show are really designed to try and get in there a little bit. We look at things like love and marriage and net worth. There's a category Simpsons, Saturday Night Live, or Halls of Fame. That's a measure of how famous you were. But then there's questions or categories that are really about the inner life. So man in the mirror, how did somebody feel about their reflection? Good dreams, bad dreams. Do they have a haunted look in the eye? Coffee, cocktail, cannabis. Which one would you want to do with this person? And then at the end, the hosts have to make a decision. Do you want this life? Yes or no? So yeah, it's a really fun show. And it's been sort of, ultimately it's about us. It's not necessarily about, I mean, we're using sort of dead celebrities as a platform to imagine decisions and, I don't know, the highs and lows of a life that's now complete. But what we're after is, what are we doing with our limited time on Earth? Anyway, so it's got kind of light banter with some philosophical underpinnings.
Yes, I love it. And I think I shared this with you the first time we met. I love the format. I love that you guys go through the criteria questions. And I think it is you definitely flip the script on how we usually talk about celebrities. So I love the show, and I highly recommend, if you haven't checked out Famous and Gravy, please do, listeners. And speaking of flipping the script, I cannot wait to get to your second pick. Please, Michael, tell the listeners what your second pick is.
It is also a cover song. It is Gin and Juice by the Gourds.
Oh my gosh. This is like maybe one of my favorite songs that we've had on the show so far. I'm a sucker for a soundtrack song, so I always love those. But this one is, in case you haven't guessed, or if you've listened to the playlist or haven't listened to the song yet, but listen to the podcast, this is just like you might expect, it is a remake of the Snoop Dogg classic from his Doggy Style album, that gets the full Texas treatment. If the original is marinated in the pot smoke of Long Beach, this one is like 100% deep fried in Austin and then dipped in some queso.
Well, also with pot smoke, probably.
Well, also with pot smoke, likely, yes.
One hopes. Yeah, it's and kind of a bluegrass version and alt country, I think, is a good way to put it. But this song was like a big. My understanding is it was kind of a sensation on Napster once upon a time, and that's where a lot of people encountered it. It was, and I've been told that it was mistakenly labeled as Fish, the jam band Fish, cover on Napster. So for a long time, people didn't know it was the Gourds who did this.
Wow!
And became a total kind of breakout cult hit. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, again, it's one of those where this song, I feel like, and the Gourds version of it could really easily fall into parody, but it doesn't. They just completely reinvent it in their own way. And that's something that I loved and respected about that. On last week's episode, I had Matt Sidholm from Super Awesome Mix on the show, and we were talking about how a good song is a good song, no matter who sings it. And I feel like this qualifies, it really feels like a fresh version of a song that everybody knows. And to the point, it's so fresh to me that it takes you a second to realize that it's gin and juice, right?
Right. That was my experience the first time listening to it too. It's like, I'm sort of into this. Wait, these lyrics are a little bit familiar. And then you get to, the chorus and you're like, oh, this is a Snoop Dogg song. And, it is funny. Like, it's definitely like, but it's not like Weird Al funny. I mean, as you said, it's sort of honoring the spirit of the original, hip hop version that Snoop put out in the mid '90s, but in a totally different geography, and surrounded by a totally different culture. And I love that about it. I love that kind of connective tissue between two very different genres and types of communities, but still like has a kind of like let's hang out and get high vibe to it,
Totally. It's as much of a party song as the original. And I think that whenever you think of the Gourds, I always think of them as being like bluegrassy, like you said, alt country, but I kind of think of them as more bluegrassy. And so then there's like this great breakdown in the middle of the song where they have like, the guitar, the bass guitar, a mandolin, like breaking down Snoop Dogg. And you're like, what is happening right now? And I smiled the whole time. Though, again, this is another long song. The original is about 3.5 minutes, and this one's about 6.5. And so they really, it's not a short song, and all 6.5 minutes, I was completely entertained, smiling. I've shared this song 1,000 times. Like, tell me how long it takes you to figure out what song this is.
Yeah, totally. And I didn't realize till after the fact that one, I sent you 2 covers, and 2, I sent you 2 long songs for the playlist. And that was coincidental. That was not deliberate. I had one other thing I wanted to say about the Gourds, and this is this is, I think, the coolest thing about me. I think I'm, a kind of a nerd, kind of a cool guy. I have my moments, but this is, I think, the coolest fact about me. The Gourds played my wedding.
Oh,
yeah, it was a wedding gift from my folks, and I was so they were playing around Austin a ton in the early to mid 2000s, and we were going to a ton of shows. We got to know the band a little bit. I heard that they had played a few weddings. I was like, man, that's the only thing I want from my folks for the ceremony, and it was so much fun. It was
I bet.
so much fun. Yeah, one of the highlights of my life.
I bet. How amazing.
Yeah.
Well, and they are such like Austin royalty, like
Yeah.
I think when I think of like bands out of Austin, I think of like, if I go way back, I think of like Christopher Cross, I think of, Bob Schneider, and I think of the Gourds, I think of Stevie Ray. Like they're all part of that Austin mix that, either or you don't, right? If I always joke, if you have to ask, you'll never know, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Totally.
you know or you don't. And the Gourds are way up there. So what a cool memory and a cool story to have those guys who played your wedding.
They did not play gin and juice. We asked them not to because it was on the table, but like my grandmother-in-law is there, and like I don't know if we can go there. So
don't know if she's down with the Snoop D-O double G.
They did, yeah, exactly. They did do a cover of because they used to do this a lot at some of the shows they played. They did a cover of "Miss You" by the Stones, and their version of "Miss You" was awesome. Like it really brought the house down. But anyway.
Well, they're so good live. Yes. If you get a chance to see the Gourds live, I think they're on hiatus now.
Indefinite hiatus. Yeah.
They're
and unclear if they'll ever reunite, but
right.
I don't know. That's the way things go, which is also, in a way, a kind of Austin thing. Everything is so transitory here, right? The small businesses never last for forever. And I don't know, you can wax philosophical about the past and just be grateful that it was there and wait for the next thing.
Exactly. And speaking of the past and being grateful, that is a very nice segue into my first pick, which is The Ocean by Led Zeppelin. So I chose this song, please, I would spend every single episode only talking about Led Zeppelin if somebody would let me do that. Totally. I'm a huge Zeppelin fan. I always have been. From the time I was little, I have loved Led Zeppelin. And it was recently the 50th anniversary of the Houses of the Holy album, which is one of their most famous. They're all the most famous because it's Zeppelin, but 50 years of Houses of the Holy. And this song is one of my favorites on that album. It's hard to pick a favorite Zeppelin song, and it's hard to pick a favorite Zeppelin song from that particular album. But The Ocean is something that I've always loved. I just feel like it's one of their, it's a song that's so Zeppelin in all ways. And I think, they had bigger hits. I think if you ask a non-Zeppelin aficionado, they're going to name Stairway. Maybe they're going to name Ramble On. Yeah. But The Ocean is one of those that I think is just so, seminal Zeppelin, right? It's got a strange timestamp on it. The time changes often. It showcases all of the musicians, of course, Robert Plant's amazing voice. And you just can't get around just the enormity of the song. It just builds and builds and goes to this beautiful place. I think that I love the line. I've always loved the line, singing to an ocean, I can hear the ocean's roar. Play for free, I play for me, and play a whole lot more. And just, again, since I was a kid, I'm like, that just sounds like pure joy, like people that are lost in their flow state, right?
Yeah, I was going to ask if you had a specific memory in connection with this song. Zeppelin for me is like, as I mentioned earlier, Stevie Ray was like the first good, music that I learned at, when I was young. Because some of the first music you listen to, like, it doesn't age so well. But like Stevie Ray is still there. Zeppelin is absolutely still there. Do you have a memory in connection with the song?
More so just like, again, loving Led Zeppelin. And I think, I always heard them. I've said this on a lot of shows. My parents loved music. We always had music on in the house. We had music on in the car.
Mm-hmm.
And probably when I was in junior high was when I really started to get into like my kind of music. Like you said, not just listening to what my parents listened to.
Yeah.
And I attribute the Eagles a lot too. I love the Eagles. They were one of the first bands that I really glommed onto. And Zeppelin was probably shortly thereafter, where I just was taken away. I loved the storytelling in their songs. I love Robert Plant's voice. I love John Bonham's drumming. That was something as a kid, which is kind of strange. Again, I say often I'm a music lover who has zero musical talent. And I think I was just in awe. I think not to dismiss, John Paul Jones or Jimmy Page ever. They're amazing. But Robert Plant and John Bonham, just I couldn't believe that kind of talent existed, even as like a young little person, like a sixth grader. I was just blown away by the talent. And I think when I heard The Ocean and I listened to the lyrics, it just, again, that's the only way I can describe it, is it sounded to me, and I didn't have these words back then, but it sounded to me like people that were in their flow state, like living their best life, doing what they were meant to do.
Well, and there's such a like, it's so funny because it was around middle school too that I found Zeppelin as well. And there is such a like, right in middle school, entering into adolescence and puberty and all that stuff, like kind of like energy around Zeppelin that is a good soundtrack for that, time in life. Because I wonder if that's not a common experience for people to encounter Zeppelin at that age,
I think it must be, because that's when people are deciding if they want to pick up a guitar, or they want to pick up some drumsticks, or they want to handle a microphone, or, whatever the case may be. And I think that you start seeking out like the people that are best in the field of what you want to do. And so if you want to play guitar, I can't imagine, not listening to Zeppelin to learn a thing or two,
or drums. I mean, it's so first principles or vocals. I mean, there is an excellence with each member, excellence of each member of Zeppelin there. That's just cool.
Definitely. It's just one of those like once in a generation bands that come together that there have been many great artists since then. I'm not one of those people that's like, they don't make good music anymore. I think they absolutely still make great music, and there's great stuff coming out all the time. And you cannot deny the genius and the magic of a Led Zeppelin. And it's just almost impossible to recreate, something like that again. No matter what super group you put together, it's going to be hard to beat those four guys.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And speaking of super groups, that led me into my second pick, and I'll explain a little bit more about how I came to this one. But one of my all-time favorite super groups, this is a song called Rhiannon by Fleetwood Mac. So this is definitely not a new song. This is a song that everybody has heard and knows. But again, like Zeppelin, Fleetwood Mac is one of my top 10 all-time favorite bands. And the other thing about them is I love the story of them as much as I love their music, right? Like I've watched every documentary and every book and every sort of piece of information, news article I can get.
Whose side are you on though, Jen, given the fraught relationships inside?
It's so tough. I want to hate on Lindsey Buckingham because he seems to be the one that just keeps blowing things up, but he's a freaking genius, right? Like you can't, how do you hate somebody that's a genius?
And felt like the creative lead of some of their best work too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Stevie's the front woman, and she will always be like the goddess of the stage to me. And that sort of is like where this came from. Houses of the Holy and The Ocean came because it was the 50th anniversary. This one came to me not because I always have, or I often have Fleetwood Mac on, but I've really been enjoying, I loved the book. And now there's a series called Daisy Jones and the Six, based on a Taylor Jenkins Reid book. And it's not the story of Fleetwood Mac, but you could compare it. It's sort of like a behind the music of Fleetwood Mac, Rumors album mixed with Almost Famous, I would say, is kind of like the story of Daisy Jones and the Six. And Riley Keough, who is Elvis's granddaughter, for those of you that did not know, plays Daisy Jones, the lead, and she's kind of a Stevie Nicks type character and just kills it. Just reminded me so much of like the power that is Stevie Nicks, right?
Yeah.
Like she, again, talking about discovering music and kind of coming into your own and not just listening to what your parents were listening to. Stevie Nicks was like everything I wanted to be, right? She was just the coolest. She was totally comfortable in herself. She wasn't married. She didn't have kids. Like she just was, to me, she was just the most badass woman in rock and kind of continues to be. Like she's still so, and just the number of people that she's influenced, almost any great singer that I love now lists Stevie Nicks as an influence.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, this song is off of their Fleetwood Mac album from 1975. And this was actually the first album that Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham joined the band for. So there are Fleetwood Mac, they were kind of a blues band, Peter Green and all that prior to Stevie and Lindsey joining. And from here, it just took off. Like this paved the way for that Rumors album, which is like, again, one of my top 5 all-time favorites.
Yeah, Rumors is incredible. I love Fleetwood Mac as well. I had 2 thoughts I was thinking about as you were talking. One is we did an episode on Famous and Gravy on Tom Petty. It's maybe not one of our. I don't usually Monday morning quarterback these things. Most of the time I walk away saying, I said my piece. That's one where I'd love them all again. But one of the things that came up is I read the, I think it's Warren Zane's biography of Tom Petty, and he and Stevie were really close. And it sounded like there was a moment where she was like, I would like to be invited into the Heartbreakers. One little bit of trivia that I learned that was super fun. The song Edge of 17 was inspired by Tom Petty's ex-wife, who had a deep Southern accent. She was from Florida. She and Stevie Nicks were in a conversation, and she said something about when she was the age of 17, but Stevie Nicks heard Edge of 17 in the accent, and from there built the song that became Edge of 17.
Wow.
Yeah, kind of fun trivia, right?
Well, and I remember hearing something too about kind of Jimmy Iovine, like putting them together for Stop Dragging My Heart Around, that when he was recording, she was hanging around, and Jimmy Iovine was kind of pushing Stevie Nicks on Tom Petty. And he was kind of like, what are you doing? Like, no, not interested. And then he heard her sing, and she went in to record Stop Dragging My Heart Around with him, and it was like, oh,
totally
okay,
clicks,
I get it
right.
now.
Yeah. And then those two, they're like, which I'm glad there's a smart producer behind the scenes who can see those sorts of, collaborations. That song's awesome. The other thing I was going to say about Fleetwood Mac, I think this actually gets back to the Gourds. They did a cover of the song I Know I'm Not Wrong, which is one of my favorite Fleetwood Mac songs, but yeah, anyway, Fleetwood Mac, I think, is outstanding. I was really glad to hear you choose that. The other thing I'd say is that Rhiannon, the song, also has a real like nostalgia to it for me. I hear that and I am back in kind of like the broody, early high school. It takes me back to sophomore year of high school in a big way. Like total, I don't know, just real important associations with that time.
Well, and it's a never skip song too, like there are so many songs from that time frame where I'm like, oh, I've heard it so many times. Like I don't need to listen to it again, but I'll never skip Rhiannon.
Rhiannon, just again, I'm saying it wrong, right? It's Rhiannon, not Rhiannon. Yeah.
Rhiannon. Yes. Rhiannon. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, again, it's just, it's always been inspiring and empowering. I love, the imagery of she rules her life like a bird in flight. Like, it's just like get Stevie Nicks that like can turn a phrase like nobody's business. And that's one that I'm just like, wow, and she was writing this stuff in the 70s. Like this was before Me Too. This was before any of that, and Stevie Nicks was just really like owning who she was. And I just always, even as a kid, found it so empowering. So if you haven't visited a Fleetwood Mac album in a while, go back and check this one out. I know, like I said, Rumors gets played a lot because of it's just a hit machine, but this album is also worth listening to and has so many good songs on it as well.
I don't know if we'll do it, but we're considering Christy McVie for Famous and Gravy, just because I don't know enough. And that's like one of the excuses with the show is like an opportunity to take an interest in a figure who I'm sort of peripherally aware of, but don't really know the ins and outs of their life. Yeah.
And I think that's one of the great things about the show, because some of my favorite episodes are folks that you wouldn't think. I think this may surprise you to know, but my favorite episode is the Florence Henderson episode. I love that one.
That. Oh, I think you're going to like
that episode.
I'm really proud of that episode.
I love it.
And well, I think you might like the next one's coming out. Maybe I should just spoil it. So we're doing an episode on Mary Tyler Moore next. Are you a fan of of Mary Tyler Moore show? I didn't know that property, and every woman I've talked to who knew that show growing up is like that TV show changed my life.
It was a little before my time.
Yeah, that's what I would have thought. Yeah, it was before my time as well. I did go back and watch it though. It's surprising how much it holds up. Like it's actually still really funny. And like lays the groundwork for a lot of sitcoms to come. But even more important than that is it is also, I didn't know this again before we did the episode, but is like regarded as as just an important moment in equal rights, right? This is the first time in TV history that you have a strong, independent, attractive woman who is not prioritizing getting married, but is instead prioritizing her work and her personal life. And it's really like kind of quite a document to go back and revisit. And like I said, still funny. Like I was surprised because usually something from 50 years ago is no longer funny.
Right.
It totally holds up. Highly recommend it. And all the episodes are out there on YouTube and Amazon Prime. So the research was fun.
Excellent. Yeah. Yes. I like I said, I imagine I'll love that one because so far, I mean, there are many great episodes. I love the David Bowie episode too, but yeah, Florence Henderson so far
has
been
Jenn.
My favorite. I love that one.
Oh, I'm so glad somebody plucked that one out. I'm proud of that episode.
I love it. Yeah. Well, Michael, thanks so much for sharing what you're listening to this week. And to learn more about Michael and the Famous and Gravy podcast, you can visit the website at www.famousandgravy.com. That's FAMOUSANDGRAVY, or download the show wherever you get your podcasts. And speaking of, please be sure to follow, download, and share this show with everyone you know and all the people you'd like to know, because music is a great way to connect. Last but not least, to stay informed on all things Super Awesome Mix, follow us on Instagram at Super Awesome Mix. Thanks for listening, and please join me again next week to find your new favorite song.